What's good, everybody? I'm Keandre, this is Intellect, and welcome back to the channel. As you're watching this, the California Classic and Salt Lake City Summer Leagues are probably going on, but this one will focus solely on Vegas. Now, from July 7th to 17th, all 30 NBA teams will play 5 games. 4 that are already scheduled until July 15th, and then the top 2 teams will play in the championship on the 17th, with the others playing in constellations on those last 2 days, the 16th and 17th. Now, we're going to try to cover as much as possible in a short period of time, so if you're looking for something specific, hit one of those timestamps, but let's go ahead and get into it. And getting into some of the most interesting teams first, we have the Oklahoma City Thunder, which I think is one of the most fun rosters out there. Obviously, that starts with Chet Holmgren, who is one of the most unique players we've really ever seen. I already know that every single possession, highlight, low light is going to be used as evidence as to why he's good, as to why he's terrible. So definitely be ready for that, but it should still be fun to watch where he's at as a player. And then you have Ousmane Dieng, J-Dub, and J-Will from this year's draft. And from last year's class, we're supposed to get Trey Mann, who should be one of the best performers, Jeremiah Robinson-Earl, and also Aaron Wiggins. Lindy Waters is on the team. We've got Gabe Brown and Jaden Shackelford on Exhibit 10 deals. This team is definitely up there in terms of interest for me. They have some of the most unique talent between Chet and Ousmane Dieng. They have Trey Mann, who's poised to have a breakout in year 2, and several other players who should contribute, so it should be fun to watch them. Now, moving on to the Houston Rockets, they are headlined by the number 3 pick, Jabari Smith Jr., who will be going toe-to-toe with other top prospects. And like we mentioned before, I'm sure he has a chip on his shoulder, so that should be something to watch. But the list keeps going. You know, they have fellow first-round picks Tari Eason and Ty Washington, who will also be on this team. You've got Josh Christopher, who should be one of the better players in Summer League when he's out there. Usman Garuba has a great chance to finally play legitimate minutes and really shine, especially defensively, and really hold down the front court with Şengün not playing. You have Daishen Nix expected to suit up as well. And in total, that's 6 players who should be in the rotation or at least contribute in some sort of fashion next year. And they also fit together pretty well in this setting. It should be a really fun team to watch. I know the energy is going to be there. I wouldn't be surprised if Jalen Green makes an appearance to watch. And like the Thunder, it's one of those unique rebuilding teams that has a lot of young talent from the last couple of drafts, so you got to watch them for sure. Now, moving on to the San Antonio Spurs, I love what they did in this draft with Jeremy Sohan, Malachi Branham, and Blake Wesley. But they also have Josh Primo from last year, who was only like 5 or 6 months younger than the guys that they drafted, so he's really like a rookie himself. And I'm very curious to see how all of their strengths and weaknesses play out on this stage and how they mesh together. You also have Don Barlow from Overtime Elite, Jordan Hall from St. Joe's, both guys who went undrafted I thought were draftable. And then the roster is riddled with guys like Darius Days, Kai Bowman, Robert Woodard. But just keeping it with those first 4 that we mentioned, Primo, Sohan, Branham, and Wesley, I'm really intrigued by this squad and excited to see the youth movement in action. And as they're currently constructed, these guys are going to be a big part of their future and key contributors next season. Now, Cade Cunningham, Isaiah Stewart, and Saddiq Bey are on this Pistons roster. I do not know if they're going to play, but if they do, that immediately makes them the best team, point blank. And you also have Jaden Ivey on this team, Jalen Duren when the Knicks deal goes through. You've got Killian Hayes, Saban Lee. Like, the talent there is just a little bit of a step above, and you have the best player by far in Cade Cunningham, and somebody who scored 50 in the NBA last year that would be playing as well. So again, don't know if they're actually going to suit up or if it's just more of a continuity chemistry type of thing, but that would make them the best team. Now, they also have guys like Isaiah Livers, who was a 2nd-round pick last year. I expect him to quietly impress in his minutes. You've got the Miami Hurricane backcourt of Moore and McGusty. Buddy Boeheim just signed to a 2-way. His brother is on the team as well. But even through all of those things, even with the big stars and the other guys on the roster, my main focus will be on Jaden Ivey, hopefully Jalen Duren once the trade goes through, and Killian Hayes' development as a lead guard and his assertiveness, even above whatever else the top guys have going on. Now, the Warriors roster is pretty contingent on Patrick Bowen Jr. and James Wiseman playing, but if they play, the combination of them, Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody, should be pretty fun to watch. Unfortunately, Ryan Rollins, 2nd-round pick this year, will not play. He has a stress fracture in his foot, but there's still a lot here. And also, Jonathan Kuminga is playing internationally right now, so he won't be in the California Classic, but reports say he should still play in Vegas. The rest of this roster is filled out by guys like Quinndary Witherspoon. I could see him sneak his way onto the team with a performance here. You got Guy Santos, a 2nd-rounder this year, and also Jacob Gilyard, 5'9" undrafted free agent out of Richmond, who should all bring something to the table. Now, with the free agent moves that they've made, Moody and Kuminga have an added pressure on them to kind of step up. That would be the main thing that I'm watching for. But moving on to New Orleans, we have the Pelicans with another tough roster. Now starting it off, we have Dyson Daniels, the number 8 pick. You guys already know a lot about him. Giant guard with G League experience already, and this is really just an extension of the competition that he saw with the Ignite. They have EJ Liddell, who was the 41st pick. They've got Carlo Makovic, the 52nd pick, and Darion Sebron is on an Exhibit 10 deal. But the Summer League vets of Trey Murphy, who was a first teamer last year, Jose Alvarado, and Najee Marshall makes this team really tough. I'd expect Trey to play a game or two and then be a great young vet for the rest of the group, but regardless, they have the pieces. You've got John Petty on this roster, Jared Harper, John Butler signed with the Pelicans on a Summer League deal. They should be good enough to be competitive in every contest and also make a run at that championship game. Now the Charlotte Hornets won't have James Bouknight in Summer League. He just had surgery on his pinky finger, so that really sucks, especially considering the lack of minutes that he had in year 1. And just seeing him with this type of freedom would have been great. But they still have a lot of other guys that I want to watch. Mark Williams, who was the 15th pick, you guys know about him, along with Bryce McGowan, who was the 40th pick, and he should get a minutes uptick with Book out. But then you also have JT Thor and Kai Jones, 2 modern, versatile forwards who I'm super high on and excited to watch. I think that they should be taking that next step forward. You also have guys like Scotty Lewis, Brady Manick, Tyshawn Alexander with this group as well. And I can tell you from personal experience, no matter what any of those other guys do, whether it's dunk on somebody, score 40, most of the applause and attention and cheering will be on one man, and that is LiAngelo Ball. He's on this team once again. But in all seriousness, it should be a good look at the future of this front court on his team especially. Another team with some second-year players I can see dropping out pretty fast is the Indiana Pacers, led by Chris Duarte and Isaiah Jackson. Duarte was an all-rookie guy last year. He's definitely a cut above the rest of this competition. And you know, Jackson is born to shine in this environment. He had a lot of good moments last year, especially down the stretch of the season. And with an extended 10 foul limit, I think that he might just go crazy. But then of course you have Ben Mathurin, who was the 6th pick, athletic wing. You guys know what he does. Andrew Nembhard, the 31st pick, basically a perfect Summer League point guard. And then you also have Kendall Brown, who should have more than a few highlight dunks and look to show that he should have been drafted higher. Dwayne Washington Jr. went undrafted last year, but he was a major contributor for the team down the stretch of the season. And then you fill it out with guys like Tevin Brown at Murray State on an Exhibit 10 deal. Also one of my sort of sleeper picks for this setting. And then Nate Hinton, Fambo Zhang, Jermaine Samuels, and Simi Shitu. You know, really fun team to watch and follow and just kind of see where everybody's at in their own developments. Now forget everything that's been going on with their actual team. We have the Brooklyn Nets with the Summer League team that should be pretty fun. Starting with Cam Thomas, that man is a walking bucket who the highest degree actually averaged 27 points a game last year and was named co-MVP. I feel like he might end up calling it good a bit early, but he's also kind of the type of guy who I could see just wanting to play out because, you know, everybody's playing. You also have Daron Sharp, Kessler Edwards, David Duke from last year, who all helped them in the rotation at different points. And then another one of my favorites, you got Alondes Williams, who should make an impact with this team as an overall playmaker. He signed a 2-way right after the draft, so there's some obvious confidence in him there. And then you've got Tajay Moore out of Houston, among a few others. But depending on how long everyone on this roster plays, they could have a good chance at making a run for that championship, even though their actual team, that window might have closed. So this Sixers group of Jaden Springer, Isaiah Joe, Trevelyan Queen, Julian Champagnie, Charles Bassey, and many others really intrigues me. I think Springer should be looking to have a great performance here and hopefully earn some rotation minutes for Philly next year, eventually taking those next steps to be in a rotation. Even if it's not in Philly, they have Harden, Maxey, a lot of different things. They have championship aspirations, so this might not be the spot, but just continuing to improve as a player. And then the rest of the names on this roster have really been like sort of top 50 type of prospects for me in the past. We're talking Grant Riller, we're talking Tyler Bay, Miles Powell, Cassius Winston, Philip Trusev, Aminu Muhammad, and Michael Foster from this year. So if you've watched the channel, they'll at least be familiar to you in some way. But I think there are a ton of different reasons to watch this team, and Julian Champagnie would be my bet for standout undrafted rookie for Philly. The last team, we've got the Memphis Grizzlies. They are led by Ziaire Williams, who could be in for sort of that breakout year like Desmond Bane had last year. Now those two are on two very different developmental timelines. Bane was, senior. We've seen him do those type of things for the better part of the last 3 years of his college career. Ziaire didn't have the greatest freshman season. He's a little bit different physically. So it could be, just a little bit of a different growth curve for him, but I'm very excited to watch how far he's taken his game, especially as a ball handler and getting more of those duties in Summer League. But you also have guys like Jake LaRavia, Kennedy Chandler, David Roddy, Vince Williams, Kenny Lofton Jr., who make for a really good group of guys, and I think that they could, make some noise in Summer League. And don't let me forget, you have Santi Aldama from last year. You've got Rondo Segu and Trey Waters, who are some of my favorite guards, regardless of whether they're in the NBA, high school. They can really go. So yeah, really liking this Memphis roster as well, and they should be a definite fun watch as well. Now getting into some of the best matchups. These are just some I kind of went through and picked out as the best or most entertaining on each day. Now, these are contingent on who is actually playing on all of these days. Some people might sit out and everything like we talked about. But on paper right now, this is just what it kind of looks like. And definitely go hit the link in the description if you want a better look at the entire schedule, kind of to see where your team plays and everything. And also just to follow along. But the first game of Summer League should be a very memorable one, with the Orlando Magic going up against the Houston Rockets. Paolo Banchero versus Jabari Smith, the two players who were kind of pitted against each other in terms of potential picks for both of these teams. Now, this is a heck of a test for Paolo because it's not just Jabari over there. You've got Usman Garuba, you've got Tari Eason. That's a very tough trio to go up against for a #1 pick, especially when his roster isn't quite as, talented. So I'm very curious to see how he handles that. RJ Hampton decided to run with Paolo, which I think was a very good decision for chemistry and just kind of giving him help out there, and a guy who can really make things happen offensively. You've got second rounder Caleb Houston out there as well. So that should be a very fun matchup. And then we have Portland versus Detroit in a really late game. This was already going to be fun with a potential Shaedon versus Jaden Ivey matchup. But if we get Cade, Sadiq Bey, Isaiah Stewart in the mix, and that becomes Shaedon's first test in the league, that'll be kind of ridiculous. In general, there's a lot of athleticism in this game between Ivey, Shaedon, Greg Brown, Keon Johnson. If you're going to be there in person, I definitely want to see the warm-ups in this one. And I think we get a lot of big-time highlights in-game from those guys as well. Now that was July 7th. Going into day 2 on July 8th, I like San Antonio Cleveland with the Spurs group of talent going up against the likes of Ochai Agbaji, Khalif Rajab, Isaiah Mobley. Charlotte, Indiana should be fun with all that talent between Ben Mathurin and Chris Duarte versus Bryce McGowens. Then you've got Isaiah Jackson versus Mark Williams, Kai Jones, and JT Thor. That might end up being the game of the day for me. And then you got Brooklyn squad headlined by Cam Thomas going up against Marjon Beauchamp, Hugo Besson, Mamu, Rajon Tucker, AJ Green, and Iverson Molinar on the Bucks. And then ending the night, we have the Warriors championship squad going up against the Knicks' quietly nice group of Quentin Grimes, Deuce McBride, Jericho Sims, Trevor Keels, and Jan Montero. So you definitely want to tune into that one, especially just watching Quentin Grimes and Moses Moody go at it and seeing where guys like Deuce McBride and Trevor Keels are at. Now it really starts heating up on the 9th, and I think a lot of these games are going to be the best of the entire week. So we've got Orlando and Paolo going up against Keegan Murray and the Sacramento Kings. This Kings team quietly has guys like Keon Ellis, Neemias Queta, and DJ Stewart in the mix. But after that one, it doesn't get much better than OKC Houston. We've got Chet and company versus Jabari and his team. Both have high-level players from each of the last 2 drafts, and they'll all be contributors, so we might low-key be getting a look at an April game between these teams. And the last couple games of the night, we've got Clippers versus Grizzlies, which has the Sierra Canyon reunion of Brandon Boston versus Ziaire Williams. The Clippers also have guys like Jay Preston, Jay Scrub, Moussa Diabate getting minutes. And we already talked about the rest of this Grizzlies group. And then it's Dyson Daniels, potentially Trey Murphy and the Pelicans versus Shaedon Sharpe, Keon Johnson, Greg Brown, Trendon Watford, Jabari Walker to end the night. And they're not pictured here, but you also have Detroit Washington, which if Cade is playing is a great one. Just seeing him go up against Johnny Davis. On July 10th, we get a KU showdown between Ochai Agbaji and Christian Brown. And the Nuggets also have Peyton Watson, who I mentioned before as being one of my short list of guys development I want to see most. Denver has Colin Gillespie, Ishmael Kamagate, and Jonte Porter even, on their team as well. Golden State versus San Antonio is big time. You've got Brandon Primo and Sohan going toe-to-toe with Moody and Kuminga and the rest of them. Sohan versus Kuminga specifically should be a great individual matchup. And then we cap it off with what I believe to be an interesting Lakers team versus the talented Charlotte group. Getting to about the halfway point, we have New Orleans, Atlanta, and that should be great. We potentially have Sharif going up against Dyson Daniels and Jose Alvarado. And then two more of my most talented teams in Summer League. Houston versus San Antonio was another highly entertaining one. Jabari versus Sohan, another great individual matchup. And then the headliner on the 11th and maybe of the entire event, Paolo versus Chet, doesn't really need to be explained. And funny enough, this is actually the second time they'll have played each other in Vegas in like the last 10 months or so. And ending off 7-11, I like getting a look at second round pick Jaden Hardy, Jalen LeCue, Marcus Bingham versus Jared Butler, Johnny Juzang, and potentially the new additions of Walker Kessler and Leandro Bolmaro. Getting sort of a first look at some of those involved in Utah's rebuild or retooling or whatever they're doing over there. On the 12th, we get first round pick Dalen Terry and two-way signing Justin Lewis going up against Christian Coloco, Ron Harper Jr., Justin Champagnie, Delano Banton, and the Toronto Raptors. The Raptors don't have the most appealing Summer League team, but I am excited to see Delano Banton. I think he could be a sleeper star in this setting. They have David Johnson on their roster too, don't let me forget him. And then we have Memphis versus Brooklyn, Atlanta versus a Miami team that features the likes of Nikola Jovic, Omer Yurtseven, Jamari Bouye, Orlando Robinson, and others. And finishing it off, I would expect the Pistons rotation from last year to no longer be playing at this point, but Ivy, Duran, Hayes versus Matherin, Jackson, Nembhard, Brown is a really good matchup. We have Keegan Murray versus Chet in that stacked roster, which should be a good test for him. At this point in the week, I'm probably more interested in watching a team like Miami go up against a Philly team. And then I threw Clippers versus Nuggets in there, but those first two are the ones I'd like to see most on this day. We have Spurs versus Hawks on the 14th. I had to get at least one Boston game in there going up against Memphis. I think this team is solid between J.D. Davison, Travion Williams, along with Jan Madar, Juhan Begaron, and Sam Hauser. Travion will at minimum be a fun watch throughout, and I think he earns a spot somewhere. The Knicks group of Deuce, Grimes, and Keels going up against Paolo is a good one, and Portland versus Houston is as well, with Shaden versus Jabari alone making it one. And on the last day of the scheduled games before the championship and consolations, OKC versus Golden State could be one of the better ones of the entire week. Johnny Davis in this kind of random Wizards roster that includes Chris Dunn, Isaiah Todd, Vernon Carey, Quentin Jackson going up against Ben Matherin and the Indiana Pacers intrigues me. Those two guys were kind of in the same conversations for most of the draft year, and I want to see how they look going toe-to-toe. Now, outside of the championship that happens during this time, I really don't care too much about what happens in these last couple of games. I'm definitely fatigued at this point, but those are some of the best matchups of Summer League in my opinion. And I almost forgot, I definitely got to talk about the Timberwolves real quick. So shout out to Wendell Moore, Josh Minot, and Mateo Spaniolo. Those are the three from the T-Wolves that I'd like to watch the most. When I was going through the best games, I had them in there before, but then Walker Kessler and Bolmaro got traded. It threw off a lot of the graphic stuff that I was doing as well. But yeah, I felt like I couldn't go this entire video without talking about them. Now to end this video, I just wanted to list out some of those I think are going to be prime candidates to make an all Summer League team, and then talk about a few of those I think fell under the radar, and just some that I didn't feel like we talked about enough in the other parts of this video. So starting with that, out in Atlanta, we've got Sharif Cooper and AJ Griffin. I have to watch Sharif a few times during the week. I know they just signed Aaron Holiday, but that's not really the caliber of player that would stop him from still competing for that backup point guard spot. I'm curious to see how far along he's come as an outside shooter, continuing to build on what he did in the G League, the in-between game, limiting turnovers, and still competing defensively. Just want to see where he's at with all of that. And then AJ Griffin, I was a bit higher on than most other people were. I think he can be a really good running mate for Sharif in this setting, just knocking down threes, and hopefully we'll get to see how much he can do as a self-creator. And I'm probably more curious to see where he's at defensively than any other specific aspect of a player's game. So I'll definitely be tuned into the Hawks for those two specifically. Now to some underrated guys to watch. We briefly mentioned a few of these guys earlier, but especially with GP2 gone, I think we could see him take this opportunity to lock in his spot on the 15-man roster and potentially crack the rotation in the future as that sort of do-it-all guard who excels defensively, is a cutter, just finding a way to make an impact. And I think that the start of that could be here in Summer League. And then Marcus Garrett with the Miami Heat. He's another KU guy who was on that 2020 team that felt that they were going to win the national championship. Just barely missed them actually winning the championship by a year. I think he should definitely continue turning heads defensively, and then that next step for him to crack into the league is finding that high-level offensive niche. So, and especially the way that roster is set up, he has a perfect opportunity to do just that. RJ Nembhard with the Cleveland Cavaliers just signed with their second two-way along with Isaiah Mobley. He's a definite candidate to kind of impress with this Cavs Summer League roster as one of the featured guys. He averaged nearly 25 with the G League last year, and I could potentially see him, helping them in the wing department and at least serving as a depth piece in the short term. But yeah, I feel like if we go any further, it'll just be overkill at this point. I tried to get to as many things as we possibly could, so if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like. Subscribe if you are new, and comment down below some of your thoughts on your favorite teams, favorite players, and potentially some of your favorite sleepers. Definitely don't overreact to Summer League as a whole. Every year we see the Trae Youngs, we see the Evan Mobleys who struggle a little bit, maybe struggle a lot. Regular season rolls around, they're one of the best players in their draft class, and all that stuff that they were saying in the summer just seems completely irrelevant and stupid. Inversely, we see guys who have great times at Summer League, get great performances, and can't even crack a rotation for reasons often involving roles. So it's best to just keep it at Summer League and don't hold on to these performances too much. Just kind of focus more on the individual aspects and improvements and where you would like to see them go in the future. I'll be recording some podcasts throughout the week to kind of recap what's going on, possibly having some guests. So stay tuned for that and all the other content I post across platforms. So we're talking Twitter, Instagram, and even maybe TikTok. So go follow me over there if you haven't yet. But that's all I've got for this one. I appreciate y'all for watching. I'm Keandre, this is Hoop Intellect, and I'm out.
I need mine up front, no ifs, ands, or buts. Tap in if you really bout it. I can be your motivation, I can be the one you call at the late nights on the grind.